At 4 a.m. in the mountain resort town of Tapalpa, the air is thin and biting. Most of the residents in the luxury country club development are asleep, tucked away in multi-million-dollar wood and stone cabins. But above the clouds, 6 Black Hawk helicopters are descending, their rotors cutting through the silence of the forest. Inside, elite members of the Mexican Special Forces check their rifles one last time. They are not here for a routine patrol. They are here for the ghost. For over a decade, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the man the world knows as El Mencho, has been a shadow. He is the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG, an organization with a military-grade arsenal and a reach that spans 6 continents. For years, he was the most wanted man on Earth, a former police officer who traded his badge for a throne of fentanyl and lead. He survived countless attempts on his life and dozens of military operations. But he was a man who didn't just fight the state, he challenged it, shooting down army helicopters and installing his own law across 28 Mexican states. But on this Sunday morning, the luck of the Lord of the Roosters is about to run out. This is not a drill, and it is not a rumor. By sunrise, the Mexican government will announce a victory that will change the underworld forever. But that victory will come at a price that is currently being paid in blood on the streets of Guadalajara. The fall of the world's most dangerous Kingpin did not begin with a grand betrayal from a rival. It began with a woman. For months, the United States Joint Interagency Task Force Counter-Cartel had been monitoring the inner circle of the Oseguera family. They weren't looking for El Mencho himself. He was too disciplined, too isolated. Instead, they watched those he loved. On February 20th, 2026, intelligence analysts flagged a move. A trusted associate, a man who had served as a courier for years. It was spotted transporting Guadalupe Moreno Carrillo, one of El Mencho's long-term romantic partners, toward a secluded residence in the Tapalpa Country Club. The location was perfect for a man in hiding. It was gated, private, and surrounded by dense pine forests that offered 1,000 escape routes. But the courier's mistake was a single, unencrypted signal. When Guadalupe arrived at the cabin on the evening of February 21st, so the surveillance confirmed what the DEA and Sedena had suspected for years. The boss was finally out of the shadows. He was there, celebrating a rare moment of peace with his security detail. General Ricardo Trevilla and the Mexican High Command spent the next 12 hours finalizing a plan that had been sitting in a drawer for 5 years. They knew that if they missed this window, El Mencho would vanish back into the Sierra Madre, and they might never see him again. At 4:45 a.m., the first perimeter was established. The plan was a hammer and anvil maneuver. Ground forces from the National Guard blocked the only paved road out of the development, while Special Forces units were dropped directly onto the ridges surrounding the cabin. As the first team approached the main gate, the silence of the mountains was shattered. Cartel gunmen, equipped with thermal optics and Barrett .50 caliber rifles, opened fire from the balcony of the main house. The response was immediate. The sky lit up as the military helicopters provided suppressive fire, their miniguns chewing through the wooden structures of the resort. This was not a standard arrest. It was a small-scale war. The CJNG gunmen knew exactly what was at stake. If the boss fell, their empire fell with him. Inside the cabin, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes did what he had done his entire life. He ran. Under the cover of a massive smokescreen generated by his security detail, he exited through a rear cellar and vanished into the thick undergrowth of the forest. Behind him, the cabin was a graveyard of spent shells and fire. But the special forces had anticipated the flight. A separate team of trackers, trained for high-altitude pursuit, broke off from the main engagement. They followed the trail of broken branches and the frantic radio chatter of the bodyguards into the deep woods. The endgame had shifted from a luxury cabin to a desperate hunt in the dirt. And as the sun begins to crest over the jagged peaks of Jalisco, the battle for the cabin compound has evolved into a desperate manhunt in the Pine Barrens. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes is no longer the invincible architect of a global empire. He is a 60-year-old man fleeing through the dirt, flanked by a dwindling circle of his most loyal Praetorian guards. But the elite paratroopers of the Mexican army are relentless. They have trained for this specific terrain, and they are closing the distance. Just 2 kilometers from the gated community, the trackers fix their sights on a cluster of figures moving through the thick brush. The silence of the woods is obliterated again. This is the second confrontation, the one that will decide the fate of the CJNG. The bodyguards realize they are trapped. They take up defensive positions behind ancient oaks and rock outcroppings, unleashing a wall of lead from specialized short-barrel rifles. For 20 minutes, the forest floor becomes a killing zone. So the special forces, supported by thermal imaging drones hovering just above the canopy, pin the gunmen down with surgical precision. During this exchange, a tragedy nearly unfolds for the military. A Black Hawk helicopter, providing close air support, is peppered with small arms fire. Its hydraulic systems fail, forcing the pilot to make a harrowing emergency landing in the nearby flats of Sinaloa. But despite the loss of their eye in the sky, the ground teams do not waver. They push forward, to clearing the undergrowth meter by meter until the cartel's resistance finally breaks. When the smoke clears and the echoes of the rifles fade, the soldiers find what they have spent a decade looking for. Hidden deep in the undergrowth, shielded by the very earth he once farmed, lies Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. He is not dead, but he is broken. Multiple gunshot wounds have torn through his torso and legs. Beside him lie 2 of his closest bodyguards, both motionless. The man who once commanded thousands of killers, who ordered the deaths of judges, politicians, and rivals with a single word, is now a gasping figure in the dirt. There is no bravado here, no final stand, just the clinical, cold efficiency of a military operation reaching its conclusion. The soldiers perform a rapid identification. The scars, the fingerprints, and the facial structure match the high-value target profile perfectly. A frantic call goes out over the encrypted command frequency. Objective Alpha secured, critical condition. The orders from Mexico City are clear. Keep him alive. The government needs him to face trial. They need the symbolic victory of the Lord of the Roosters in chains. A medical evacuation helicopter is scrambled immediately, its rotors kicking up a storm of pine needles as it descends into a nearby clearing. The soldiers hoist the wounded Kingpin onto a stretcher, unaware that the real war is only just beginning, not in the forest, but on the highways of Mexico. The flight from Tapalpa is a race against time and biology. On board the transport, military medics work frantically to stabilize El Mencho. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. The trauma of the gunfight, combined with the underlying kidney issues he has suffered from for years, is a lethal combination. The original plan is to fly him directly to a high-security military hospital in Guadalajara. But as the helicopter nears the city, the radio crackles with terrifying reports. The CJNG has already realized their leader is gone. The city is being locked down by the cartel. Intelligence warns of narco-bloqueos, burning buses and armed squads, blocking every route to the hospital. A rescue attempt or a suicide strike on the helicopter is a near certainty. The pilots receive a sudden change of orders. They divert the aircraft to Morelia International Airport, a move designed to confuse the cartel's tracking. From there, a specialized Air Force jet is waiting to leapfrog him to Mexico City. But for Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the journey ends in the air. Somewhere between the mountains of Jalisco and the lights of the capital, his heart stops. The massive blood loss and the shock of the operation prove too much. Thus, when the plane finally touches down at the military hangar in Mexico City, the doctors don't find a prisoner. They find a corpse. At 60 years old, the reign of the most dangerous man in the world has ended, not in a prison cell, but in the sterile, vibrating hold of a military transport. In the world of the CJNG, there is a standing order known as the retaliation doctrine. It is a protocol designed for one specific purpose. If the leadership is touched, the country must stop. And within 90 minutes of the first shots in Tapalpa, the signal is sent. Across 22 states, from the border cities of the north to the tourist beaches of the south, the cartel's monstruos, improvised armored trucks, roll out of hidden warehouses. They don't target other criminals. They target the infrastructure of the Mexican state. This is not a disorganized riot. It is a synchronized, military-style shutdown of a nation. By mid-morning, over 250 confirmed narco-bloqueos have paralyzed the country's most vital arteries. Cartel gunmen hijack commercial buses and tractor-trailers at gunpoint, ordering passengers out before dousing the vehicles in gasoline and setting them ablaze. In Guadalajara, the second-largest city in Mexico, the scene is apocalyptic. The red alert is activated. Public transportation is suspended, and the government issues a desperate plea for citizens to stay indoors. But the CJNG isn't just blocking roads. They are hunting. While the smoke from the roadblocks blinds the public, a more targeted slaughter is happening on the outskirts of the conflict zones. The National Guard, scrambled to clear the highways, find themselves driving into carefully prepared kill boxes. In one of the most devastating incidents of the day, a convoy of Guard members is ambushed in the municipality of Zapopan. The cartel doesn't use handguns, they use rocket-propelled grenades and drone-dropped explosives. By the time the sun begins to set, the official count is staggering. 25 National Guard members have been confirmed dead. Men and women who were caught in the crossfire of a Kingpin's final, desperate order. This level of retaliation is a message. It is a display of power meant to prove that even without El Mencho, the organization's military capacity remains untouched. For the first time in history, the cartel uses specialized drones to drop IEEDs on police stations in Guanajuato and Michoacán. The state is no longer just fighting a drug gang, it is facing a criminal insurgency. The sheer scale of the violence catches the government off guard. Despite the massive victory in Tapalpa, the administration of President Claudia Sheinbaum faces an immediate crisis of legitimacy as the death toll among security forces continues to climb. The chaos extends far beyond the gunfights. The economic heart of Western Mexico begins to flatline. Major airlines, including Air Canada, Volaris, and Aeromexico, grounded all flights into the region. Puerto Vallarta, a hub for international tourism, becomes a ghost town overnight, as thousands of travelers are told to shelter in place in their hotels. For many, the reality of the situation hits home when the U.S. Embassy issues its highest-level security alert. The message is simple. Stay where you are. Lock your doors. Tui and do not travel. Even essential services are targeted. Cartel cells attack gas stations and small businesses to enforce a total shutdown. Schools across multiple states announce that they will not open on Monday. The message from the CJNG is clear. If the state takes our leader, we will take your security. As the first night of the post-Mencho era begins, the silence on the streets is heavy. The Lord of the Roosters may be dead, but his shadow still covers the country. Eid and the 2026 FIFA World Cup, just months away, now hangs in a state of deep uncertainty. The government has won the battle, but as the fires continue to burn, it is starting to look like they are losing the war for the soul of Mexico.